Another Maciej. So one is the boss, another was is just yet another, developer drone at STX Next. Um, yeah, but that actually means that I actually up to this date work with Python code, and I'm quite happy with that. Um, but if anybody bothers to do so, you can always check me out on LinkedIn. Um, Nothing fancy in there, but still, if you want to connect or something, hit me up. Uh, like I said, just a Python developer here. So it's been a pretty long time actually since the Python was released. So this guy, of course, gives us an excuse to throw a conference in its honor. But other than that, not. It's quite actually hard to say what that means. That couple decades, couple of years have passed. But what for me puts it very much into perspective is that, assuming, of course, that we have most of us are engineers here, it's very likely you guys are actually younger than Python. So yeah, think about that, especially if you are one of these people that is, I started learning Python language so late, like in college, or even not in the college. Even after that, when you actually wanted to, I need to pick up some job, and only then. So yeah, apparently some guys may have been already learning. Their mother could have been learning a book about Python when she was pregnant with them. So yeah, beat that. So yeah, I don't think it's a good metric of this. What is actually a good predictor of your success. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, and it's not excuse, but still, it's funny to think about. Then again, it's like, hey, Python had a huge success, but then, so why did that happen? It's like 100 other languages appeared in the meantime, and I'm not talking just about toy languages or joke languages, real life languages. So apparently there is something to it. Yeah, and as already mentioned, there is this popularity of language index, which shows that Python was steadily increasing in popularity, where other languages were dropping in popularity or just floating out there. So yeah, we are not nearly as massive as the Java was at some point, or C, right? But still, Python did gain a huge momentum. And of course, there have been a number of presentations, blogs, and so on discussing why did that happen. One part, and most will agree that okay, it's easy to use, but it's not always the case because there are still improvements coming, and this is what I actually want to talk about in this presentation. So, but as for the Edge, what Edge gives us, it's like, yeah, it's mature, but what does that mean? It means that the manager won't laugh you out of the room when you suggest to use Python in a bigger project that is actually important for the company, not just some toy tool. But other than that, that's okay. So if somebody said, okay, here's a technology, it's out there for years, is that a metric of success? How many years it survived somewhere on some repo? I don't think so. So when we look at the popularity and that the fact that it's growing, that yeah, so something was being done right there. And I think when especially when we think that it's actually community-driven thing, It's not that there are now there are a huge investment done in Python, but previously it wasn't like a Moloch like Java, which basically was corporate operated. Yeah, but there also comes cost to that. So, and we already seen a huge split in the community when the Python 3 topic appeared. And yeah, that was quite a long time ago, and it was very painful for us, which I will talk more about. And Python community did learn some few lessons about that. And then again, already mentioned on the previous presentation, there are these new cool languages incoming, and Python is still Python. We don't get any more that jiggly feelings after years of writing it. So that is an actual negative of coding Python, but it's not all that bad. So because the Python wasn't the same language all these years ago. Python is a constantly evolving entity. And how is that done? It's like any other open source project. It's driven mostly by community. There, of course, there is that one guy that did the majority of the work in the beginning. So this is a Guido, and Guido is basically the guy that created the jobs for us. And we should be thankful to him, and especially his work managing that community, because at some point you even if you can look up the GitHub repo of CPython, Guido is a still active developer, but as time has passed, basically his work moved to, also to the managing of the community of the organization, Python as an organization. And that is also so much work that actually at some point he decided, okay, it's fun being a dictator, but it's actually quite tasking. And he just let go and said, you guys, I trust you guys. Figure this stuff out. And the Python community did deliver. They actually come up with this Python steering council, where in exactly the same way that other features in the language are developed, that is through the Python improvement proposals, a new way to make decision was made. So Python improvement proposals are basically, so whenever you, maybe most of you more of you will be acquainted with the request for comments. This is some older standard. So, and again, maybe not, because not so many of you are old enough here. But the architecture decision records, which is a thing that you should use on your bigger projects, this is basically it for Python. So whenever an idea appears, you still will throw out some emails, talk with chats with the co-developers and so on. But actually, any of you can influence Python through this way. And yeah, this is, since we have core developers today, then you can probably hit him up and get to know more about this process directly from him as well. So it's like, hey, the creators of Python are among us. We can be them as well. And I believe this is what gives Python so much power. So, but let's be more concrete. So, okay, cool. The new Pythons are still coming, but what is the exact direction? What is happening in there? So we already, when you look up any new Python version, you will see a couple of features mentioned, like At some point, there was Ascent.io included in that. That was actually expanded over versions. I think every time something is added on top of it, some actually convenience keywords, which have some decrements, but I will mention it later. There are some controversial stuff like Walrus Operator, which is again a cool name and actually a cool feature, but people also have been divided on that. And there is that a new shiny structural pattern matching, which is again cool stuff. Also something that apparently won't break your runtime code, but at some point did break some tools, linting tools. Again, Łukasz knows something about that. Yeah, but it's all about developers and their convenience. So there also come stuff like better traceback. So we already had chained exceptions. There is also the topic that will be mentioned later. There are typings, so we can actually. So yeah, Python won't be a language that compiled language ever, but you can actually know from looking at your typings, if you've done them correctly, what I'm dealing with there. And that was supposed to be just a developer node, but actually some new features have been developed by the community using that as well. But under the hood, there is also some exciting stuff happening, and that is the speed. So the Python speed was always an issue, and probably will be, because yeah, let's don't joke ourselves. It's not a compiled language, so yeah, there are so many things that you can actually do. So it's but like the IT as a whole field, as a computer science as a field, have been progressing forward, and some new cool stuff have been being added to Python. And sometimes it was being have been going hand to hand with actual improvement for the life of the developers. So years ago, we have been using order dict because we want our keys to be ordered in the dictionary, and now it's just out there. It's because the structure that have been used to implement it have been just more performance, and that feature came along with it. And yeah, at that point, it was decided that yeah, since Python 3.7, it will be a feature actually that you can guarantee and can rely on. Then again, it's okay. This stuff, some stuff did slow down Python. Like Python 3 had delivered many improvements, but at the very beginning, it was actually slower than Python 2. So that again will give an argument against it. So that problem was quickly picked on, and I think don't cite me on that, but I think with 3.4, 3.5, we have been already good with the performance. It was at the very least as good as Python 2, both memory-wise and runtime. Again, right now there is even more concentrated effort on the topic of speed, and which will be coming in the incoming releases. Also, it's not only Python community, since this speed stuff, it's nice for us as developers, but where it's actually is very much matters is, hey, I'm deploying my app on hundreds of servers. I want to, if you are saying that I could deploy it on 10 servers less than that, 10% servers less than that, then yeah, that's real cash. So big companies are investing that, and some minor improvements are coming to it. Like basically, the Gilectomy was a community effort, but out of nowhere came implementation from an employer of my company. So which you can again you yourself up later. But as for the direction, so there is like this huge push for, okay, we want new features, we want to be better, we want to be faster, and with faster it's comes like we can be faster, but only with this specialized with these constraints. But we don't want to add the constraints, too many constraints, especially for the developers or compatibility, because hey, we learned the Python 2 can never happen again. So there is that push for backwards compatibility. Then again, I have been talking a lot about implementation details, and Python language, and these are two different topics, and we need to be aware of that. So there is Python and there is CPython. One is Python as a programming language, which we all love, and there's that CPython, which, come to think to it, is quite simplistic, but yeah, a lot of it in terms of implementation, because like there is one main loop, or at least was some time ago, which was just executing each instruction separately. There wasn't that much logic to it, but that is improved. There have been for years there have been efforts to actually create alternative implementations. The actual Python, while it doesn't have a strict specification like you have been expecting with C, which is released every now and then, and you wait years for it. You can actually see Python evolving real time, and it's if you're doing an implementation, yeah, there is stuff that will be set. This is the spec of the language. But again, if you really want to be the Python compatible, like in real life Python, then you are looking actually at the CPython interpreter and looking up that and see, okay, this is how it's being done in real life, because most of the programs are being run by CPython these days. Only the people that really want to bring up all of that speed do something more specialized. Like I think Facebook created that Cinder fork of CPython just to make it run faster. There is that also this funky stuff. If you ever thought that, okay, I had JavaScript so much that I cannot stand it and I want to run Python in browser, then there's like Pyodite. Again, cool project, but not something I will talk more about today. So I have mentioned Python, CPython, and there's like when we are talking about language, we are looking at the versions of the language itself, or on that living specification. But then what is actually important to us as a developer is, okay, yeah, cool that there is this new spec incoming, but what I actually want is the release of the Python interpreter to launch my app. I want it to be stable. So, and the releases of that are designated by the small dots, and the bigger dots is actually the first release of a particular version. So this is all for CPython, obviously. If we were to put the PyPy here, then we will see PyPy lagging like 3 or 4 years every version, which just shows how much effort is to be there. Yeah, but one historical mention, the Python 3, yeah, it was quite a long time ago as well, so over 10 years, and it's still Python 2 still appears in conversation from time to time, sadly. Also, what I would like to bring to your attention, which maybe not that visible to you, but is that, hey, how soon I actually should look at the version. So it probably, if it was released, it probably is broken. But actually, when you look at the just released, it will probably be broken and there will be a bug fix release soon after. But actually, when you soon look at it, the Python is not that bad with testing the stuff that is being released. So yeah, sure, there will appear more smaller releases after interpreter was released to the world, but actually you don't see them that less frequent and afterwards. So just waiting a couple of months may be enough for you to be, hey, maybe it's time to try it out. And what you should also take from that is that that blue line here, which for 3.6 it ends in this December. So yeah, if you have a project that is running on Python 3.6, then probably after this presentation, create a ticket to update that, because it will cause problems for you, I promise, and I will say why in a moment. And why I suspect you of running Python 3.6. Basically, when you look at the PyTest installation from pip and on which version people are installing that, it's like 3.6 have been in my major version that is used overall. There is still that stagnant and stubborn Python 2. So if you are in this position and it's either you forget about some CI job that's still running, I guess, because why would reinstall that? But if you hope for that project to live another 5 years, then just public safety announcement, go to Python modernize and run it over your code. Yeah, but what's especially interesting about this graph is that there's a huge difference in the rate of adoption, actually. So Python 3.6 did gain a huge momentum, and this was also because it was a version that actually was the version you have most of people have been using for. I want to convert from Python 2 to 3, so which should I take? And 3.6 was there for most of you when the tooling for conversion was mature enough and people have pressured enough into conversion. But there is also a matter of features, and this is just my pet theory that there's a feature in Python 2 that basically was also a huge deal for people. Because if it was just a matter of speed, then 3.5 was enough. You didn't have to go up after that. So why should I be updating? Why should I pick this particular Python version, the next Python version? And for this 3.6, I think like for the developers, like we are lazy people. We want stuff to work and to look nice. And with 3.6, it just came down to F6. So yeah, it's cool. The stuff runs a little bit faster and so. But yeah, if I can type the string in that more concise manner, then yeah, I'm golden. I'm just so happy about that. Then again, why I think you should run away from Python 3.6 right now is that, hey, it's nearing its end of life. And what that means is that, yeah, if you are running Red Hat, then probably you have another 10 years when you can sleep on your job. But it's not like we are running Python interpreter to run Python code that we have just written. There is also that huge open source community that is pushing out new packages. And they won't care about your archaic setup. And I think this is where the most of power of Python comes in. So yeah, there are some cool features which are just conveniences for you, but there is also that community which, if they are maintaining a client app for some API, where API tends to update, or if you be caught with your pants down when that API updates and breaks something, and you have to update Python, then it's not a good spot to be in. So yeah, just because of the Python features itself embedded in the language are not pushing you to update. Think about that perspective. That there is like a growing amount of packages that can be out of reach of you for you because you are not running the latest Python. And again, okay, so let me correct that statement. Latest Python, maybe that's not quite required. But keeping like Python from the previous year, right now they come yearly, and before that it was a year and a half. There's no reason not to do that. Yeah, but of course this doesn't apply to everyone out there. It's if you are you've written some you are a machine learning researcher, you grab the newest package, the newest Python at that time of writing the paper. You are not obliged to update that stuff for later generation constantly because it's too much work for you. It's not worth it. You are supposed to write the stuff exactly what you did then, but nothing more than that. If you are still studying, then yeah, I guess you guys live in a museum. Nothing to do about that. I won't batch my nose in your business. But if you are a developer maintaining an active app, yeah, look it up. You'll probably find it more preferable to work with the newer versions. And if you want to do that and to know quite to do that, because so far you have been also playing with the Python interpreter that was installed on your machine, then there is tooling to help you with that. You can of course grab manually the installation of Python from the Python org, install that, or even compile it if you really want to. I advise against that. But for developers, tools like PyEnv are pretty great. There's some configuration in the beginning but then you can throw out every Python version you want. But even better is if you run with Docker and the containers. Then you can update your projects as needed when possible, because there will be a little difference how soon you can update, because again, some third-party dependencies may be compatible with newer Python later. And I have been talking about that. So for a lot, the Python dependencies, another packages that you are pulling in your project, because I do feel like, yeah, Python is cool. Python is getting new features and all, but it's more about dependencies than the interpreter version itself. And you have to have some hygiene in there. So you are not supposed to look stuff because if you lock it, then you will forget about it and you will never update that. So using stuff like a pip compile, which will allow you to upgrade packages when you want, not when it randomly installs something new, will be very helpful for you. But of course, with all that said, all that mean nagging you to, hey, update stuff, go with the live on the bleeding edge. I don't believe it's also a good idea always. If you are if you are in the no, actually, no, not even in the machine learning. In the machine learning, if you go with Anaconda or something like that, like a prepackaged, there is also a reason why they are going with the older, more maintained versions. So there is that balance. So yeah, I want to keep before there is behind me there is running end of life, which is coming for example for the Python 3.6 people, which means that no new packages for me, basically, no new updates. And there is also that wall in the front, which is okay. You want to install NumPy. You probably hope that the maintainer of NumPy already created a wheel for it, which is a binary distribution of that package. So maintainers still need a little bit of time after a project was released. And from my experience, a year is like a sweet spot if you want to be on the safe side. But then there are also other things that you need to be aware of, that sometimes it breaks in a very unpredictable way. And with Python 3.10, we have seen that where actually the Python the 3.10 number in YAML was when it was converted back into string, it was interpreted as a 3.1, which doesn't compare nicely with 9. So there is, and how can we actually make that transition safe then? Basically, have a CI. There is no possible excuse for not having CI, for not running tests, and even basic tests which install dependencies, run some very basic unit tests that only touch on that bit of function tool will prevent the majority of the problems that come with upgrading. And then if you have been also lazy, busy with developing new features and don't have time for full test coverage, just install a continuous integration in your project, configure that. And that will mean if stuff explodes, you will know about it, you will be able to fix it very quickly, in part thanks to that great new trademarks that we are having in Python. So yeah, and finally, Carlo, to maintenance, don't bother with the older versions. We actually what we need in Python to strive in Python for Python to strive is new features of your great libraries, not support for some technology from years ago. If nobody cares about the project, it's not that much work to upgrade. And yeah, and here I believe where we should work on very bleeding edge of Python versioning. So yeah, again, throw that into CI, the next incoming version, ideally the 3.11 dev as well. Okay, that will sum up my presentation then, and we have time for questions, right?
Yeah, we do. Thank you, Maciej, for the presentation. I wanted to ask you, when is the, it was Python 3.6 end of life that you were talking about?
Yeah.
And when is it?
So basically think end of December, so next month.
End of December, next month. That's really soon. I'm just asking about it because it might be important later. I'm just going to say that. And also, on an unrelated note, people have been asking about the contest that's coming up. It's coming up also a little bit later, okay, after a few more of the presentations that we have upcoming. Now, do keep the questions coming. We have a few minutes for Q&A. As they come in, I wanted to highlight a little bit of the comments that we had. In the meantime, people were saying that they are not exactly, younger than Python here. Some people were saying like 35 plus. Okay, as somebody who's turning 30, next year, I feel ya. It's coming. And then I wanted to highlight this comment for those who are curious if it's worth to learn Python. Last year, I decided to do this, and in January, I'm joining STX Next as a junior dev. I encourage you to do the same. Just thought it's a very nice sentiment. Thank you so much. Sorry, do we have questions coming in? Also, and you mentioned you're like a developer drone at the beginning. Like everybody should know, Maciej is one of our most experienced, most expert developers, and really happy that you managed to have the presentation today. Okay, I don't want to steal the time for answering the questions. Let's get right into them then. What's your preferred dependency manager and why? I hope that's a good one.
Yeah, so I think that answers this question if you are talking about the locking dependencies. So for me, the simplicity does the trick, because at some point I have been the pipeline advocate, but it was just too much learning and working around its specific problems, which also could appear when you have been building the app. And with pip compile, you are basically building on dependencies once, you are committing that to the repo, and then you are okay. You are just using another requirements txt file. So it's very easy to understand by anybody that has any familiarity with how you work with pip, and it just does a simple job well.
Okay, Jacek, hope that answers the question, and we'll go right into the next one. I'm very curious about your answer here. Bartosz is asking, do you think there's a need for Python 4?
Yeah. Okay. So I think it was already shown by how I'm pushing people for the new for using the bleeding edge stuff. That yeah, I think like we can leave somebody in the dust. It's their fault, but I don't think it will happen because it wasn't also it was not healthy for the Python community. What has happened with the Python 3. And I think there is too much effort, too much hours of work globally spent on that. So right now, I haven't heard personally or about any features that would justify that. So I do not believe there is an immediate effort need for Python 4. But
Okay.
again, there are couples of articles out there that discuss that. Very, if you type that in the Google, you come up with some great articles about that topic as well.
Okay, okay, very interesting answer. I was really curious about that. I do have to highlight this comment. Samir is saying, thanks for the best presentation. The conference is not over yet.
Yeah, best so far. Yeah, huge
Best
achievement
so
for
far?
me. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so
And so you know, guys, so somebody is poetry for the win, and so these are great projects. Just so you know. I have been beating too much with it to appreciate it enough, but it's also a great effort to solve a real problem. So
okay. Yeah, I did try to highlight that comment as well. Jakub is saying you just made the other Maciej jealous. Yeah, I wonder if he's still with us. But anyway, there's a lot more presentations coming up,
yeah,
so
and
we'll see
yeah,
which one is the best one. Probably everybody's gonna have their
and
favorite
the
one, just
guide
like yeah.
and the guide pricing STX Next already. Well, he's only joining. Good way to get some brownie points. You'll get far in your career.
There you go. Okay, and I think we have time for one last question. Oh, Bartosz is saying thanks for the answer. No problem, Bartosz. Jacek is saying yes, thanks. No problem, Jacek. And finally, this one is a bit of a doozy. For what use case you wouldn't use Python and why? We don't have a lot
So,
of time, but a short answer, what would that be?
what case when I wouldn't use Python? So I think at some point I mentioned microcontrollers as a thing that there is a variation of Python, but yeah, I wouldn't use it there because it's just not for it. If you want to, there is other better stuff for it, maybe Lua or something like that. If you really want interpreted language, but it's don't try to put Python in somewhere that it doesn't belong, because with MicroPython, what actually happens is again a great project solver, but yeah, it's like it's called Python, but it's not Python actually. It's for me, it's just confusing at that point.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I like that answer a lot. Okay, I think Piotr is still setting up his presentation. One last quick question then. Do you think that Python should change the versioning convention? For example, 3.9.1 instead of
Actually,
3.10?
Actually, I think that is only decent reason for Python 4.
Huh.
So we could just bump the front number, and I think it will solve a lot of trouble, because that problem, from what I have seen, appears in a couple of places. So I don't know exactly what was the reason for going with 310, but yeah, it's not first time that it happens that such a change causes such problems in some open source project, because how the stuff was implemented in the past, that we never had, I believe, that minor version in 10. In two digits in the minor version. So I don't believe that we should abuse the patch number in that for that, because I believe it would, yeah. Again, but bumping the first number maybe would have scared more people, because they will expect a
Yeah.
breaking change where there was not, and I believe there is no intention to have a minor breaking changes.
I see. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maciej, for the answers. There's more discussion in the comments. Feel free to jump in there because people are talking about using Python for games. I can't, unfortunately, feature every comment because we do have to get into the next presentation. Thank you, Maciej, again, so much for being at the conference and for giving your talk. And I'm going to remove you now. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Bye.